Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're literally tearing up the standard audit playbook. We're zeroing in on ISO/IEC 42001-2023 and really looking at how tapping into the power of historical case studies can completely transform an audit. We're talking about shifting from a tedious compliance check into a massive driver of real organizational value. So let's dive into this with a pretty big question. Can yesterday's audits actually fix tomorrow's risks? You know, in our world, there's a huge difference between being just a checklist auditor and being a true strategic lead auditor. A checklist auditor is just living in the present, ticking boxes. But a strategic lead auditor, they're looking backward. They're mining the data, the case studies, the past wins and failures, all so they can anticipate and mitigate tomorrow's risks before they even happen. All right, here is our agenda for today. First, we'll explore the power of past audits. Then, we'll look at shaping the audit scope and adapting to organizational culture. After that, we'll reinforce core ISO objectives. And finally, wrap things up with delivering actionable audit value. Let's get to it. Section 1. The power of past audits. So what are we actually talking about when we say case study insights? Well, it's tangible, real-world evidence. We use this to assess how effective an information security management system really is, and then use that exact data to guide targeted corrective actions. These insights, they aren't just abstract theories sitting in a binder somewhere. They're empirical proof of how security controls actually hold up when put under intense pressure. The source material actually drops this fantastic quote. Case studies allow auditors to learn from both successes and failures, improving their skills and understanding of the audit process. It is absolutely crucial to look at both the massive operational wins and the catastrophic system-breaking failures. Doing that gives you a literal roadmap for uncovering hidden risks that a basic theoretical checklist would, completely miss. Moving on to Section 2, Shaping the Audit Scope. Think about it like this. If you're just relying on a standard audit plan, you're pretty much stuck with generic objectives and reactive, basic compliance checks. It's just not enough. But when you leverage past data, you generate an insight-driven audit plan. This gives you a highly tailored scope, a sharp focus on historical risks, and it perfectly optimizes your resources because you're anticipating complications well before they even pop up. Okay, so how do we actually pull this off practically? It comes down to a structured methodology. Step 1, you comb through the data and identify those specific past successes and failures. Step 2, you carefully assess the organizational context around those events. And Step 3, you grab those learnings and apply them directly to mitigate future risks in your current audit scope. It's a continuous, logical flow from past data straight into future protection. Section 3, Adapting to organizational culture. Now, what's really fascinating here is how evenly divided the audit context really is. The factors influencing it basically split into thirds. You've got organizational structure, culture, and specific goals. The case studies prove, without a doubt, that you absolutely must tailor your strategies to these three specific areas. Because, honestly, what works for a rigid legacy financial institution is definitely not going to work for some agile, fast-moving tech startup, right? Let's ground this in reality with a scenario straight from the sources, cloud service providers. If you're auditing a cloud provider, past case studies show us that their unique structural and cultural challenges demand a hyper-focused audit. Think about it. They're managing vast amounts of customer data across multiple platforms. That means your audit has to deeply scrutinize things like stringent access controls and data encryption. Adapting to that very specific context, it's completely non-negotiable. All right, Section 4, Reinforcing core ISO objectives. Here's a triad you really need to keep in your back pocket. The core ISO IEC 4200 and 2023 objectives are leadership commitment, robust risk assessment, and continual improvement. Whenever you're pulling insights out of historical case studies, every single finding should reinforce at least one of these core pillars. That's how you guarantee your audit stays perfectly aligned with the standard. Let's zoom in on that first objective for a second. The data comparing leadership involvement against audit success is just glaring. The case studies repeatedly show us that low involvement from top management will completely derail your ISMS effectiveness. Seriously, you could have the absolute most advanced security controls on the planet, but without real leadership commitment, the whole system is ultimately going to fail. And when it comes to that second objective, robust risk assessment, nothing illustrates it better than high-stakes real-world applications. Take autonomous vehicles. The real-time AI decisions these cars are making demand a risk assessment that balances public safety, hardware malfunctions, and incredibly complex ethical guidelines. Analyzing past case studies in this field shows auditors exactly how to evaluate those massive, literal life-or-death risks directly against the ISO framework. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Delivering Actionable Audit Value. So how exactly does a strategic lead auditor translate a historical finding into a genuinely value-driven recommendation? Well, it's all about being incredibly specific. For instance, if a case study reveals AI bias in healthcare diagnostics, your recommendation isn't just a vague, hey, fix the bias. No, it's to implement a mandatory human-in-the-loop review. Unexplained AI refund rejections? You integrate explainable AI features. What about outdated password policies? You enforce strict, automated technical controls. You have to connect the dots. This brings us to a quote that really represents the ultimate "so what" of every audit. Developing clear, actionable recommendations is essential for driving improvement. We aren't here to just generate endless piles of useless paperwork or mindlessly check compliance boxes. We're here to drive continuous improvement and build genuine, long-lasting resilience within an organization. So, the most crucial takeaway today is this. We absolutely have to transform reactive compliance into a proactive, value-driven strategy. When we treat historical case studies as our auditor's compass, we stop just chasing problems after the fact, and we actually start preventing them. This whole approach completely elevates the auditing profession from being seen as an administrative burden into being recognized as a critical, strategic necessity. I want to wrap up our explainer today by leaving you with a pretty provocative question. How will historical insights reshape your next audit strategy? I really encourage you to take this strategic framework, look back at the historical data, and start implementing these insight-driven methods on your very next project. Thanks so much for focusing in with us today, and as always, keep learning.